It's 22 degrees now.
It's we'll go by the temperature. When it's 23
minute ago.
degrees, then we'll talk. So welcome everyone to a live episode of the Meeple Syrup Show.
Oh.
I'm Sen-Foong Lim, the host of the Meeple Syrup Show, and hopefully Erica will someday walk through that door as the co-host as well. But we're gonna get started just because it is go time, as Josh said. So I'd like you all.
Said that.
I said
No, somebody
I
on
said
that
it.
end said it.
I
I
said
would
it.
never say go time.
You'd never say go time? Are you serious? Come on
It's
in.
time
Come sit
to
down.
go.
So we're here live and interactive at Fan Expo 2019, and we have in front of us the creative team, most of the creative team, like what?
-1.
4/5.
80%.
And there's some other contributors
Yeah.
too. Sure.
Of the game that we know of called In the Hall of Mountain King. Just right there, as we can see. We can't actually see that on the camera, so if you can bring that into the camera view, that'd be great. That's what happens when you have, when you leave your good tripod at home.
Catch
And-
the shine.
Yeah, it's got really nice copper foil. That is like premium. Is that the deluxe edition?
It is,
Yes, yes.
Does
Yeah,
every
we're-
edition have copper foil?
Nope.
No, we have them both here.
Oh, good. Okay, so we can see the differences. So I'd like you guys all to introduce yourself to our esteemed guests here.
So my name is Jay Cormier. I'm half of the design team. Graham Johns, a friend of mine back in Vancouver. We designed In the Hall of the Mountain King.
And my name is Kwanchai Moriya. Is that the camera? Because I feel like it's just the chin.
It is totally your chin. It's all chin all the time.
I'm the illustrator on this project.
My name is Josh. I am the graphic designer and creative director for the project.
I'm Helaina Cappel. I am half of Burnt Island Games and the publisher of In the Hall of the Mountain King.
And you guys also have another brand that you publish under, correct?
We do. We have a family brand. It's called KTBG, or Kids Table, where that brand is very different than what we do with Burnt Island Games. We make games that kids can play. They're for adults, but kids can play them.
So
Right.
no angry trolls.
No,
No.
angry trolls.
Well,
No.
yes.
Maybe.
But cartoony.
Cartoony angry
Yeah,
trolls.
come on in. Yeah.
Oh, so just so you know, this isn't live.
Oh.
Because that would like eat data
So
like
you're
nobody's
edit-
business.
you're
Yeah.
editing
So
this?
we can edit if necessary.
That's
All
amazing.
this banter could be lost.
If you would really like me to lose all the banter, I will
No, no,
lose the
keep
no,
banter.
it. Keep
no,
this-
no, you
Totally keep the
it
banter.
this.
Yeah, this is amazing. Okay, so Jay, let's start with you because you are the
One of.
designer,
Yeah.
one of the designers behind the game. How did you think of the idea of In the Hall of the Mountain King?
Yeah, it's actually kind of funny. It was Graham actually was the one that kind of we had been trying to work together. Him and I alternate teaching at game design at Vancouver Film School, part of their video game design program. We teach game design, and he teaches for one semester, then I teach the next semester. So and then we are in the same game design group, then we play test each other's games and all this kind of stuff. And we've been trying to kind of work on a game together, just like almost all game designers that hang out together eventually want to make a game together with people that make games. And so we're like, yeah, and we tried once and it didn't work and whatever. And then he kind of emailed me out of the blue and he's like, I thought, it'd be cool to be like a game based on In the Hall of the Mountain King, the song. Does anybody know the song? Do you know it?
Can you
If
sing
you don't
it?
know it,
You do know it.
Josh,
You do
can,
know it.
Josh can sing it for
It's
us.
a song. It's the classical song. It's a do 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 do. You all heard it. You all know it.
Yeah.
It starts off really quiet, and then it just builds and builds
Yeah.
and builds to a crazy crescendo.
And so he said that in his email, and that was all he said. And I'm like, that's literally my favorite song. Like it's if there was a theme song to my life that was just playing around, that would be what I'd be walking around to.
Which is weird.
Like I'd wake up,
yeah.
I wake up in the
Stressful.
morning. I wake up in the morning, and then things start getting going, and then it's like, go, let's go. I know, I love it. And then he had an idea of something, and I might have cut him off in the idea of what he said. I'm like, that's all cool or whatever. But I said, if there's a game about In the Hall of Mountain King, the one thing I feel like it has to have is a snowball, because the song. as
What's
we
a
just-
snowball?
It gets bigger and bigger and bigger and louder and louder and
Right.
louder. So the song gets faster and faster and picks up and gets like there's only like a few instruments at the beginning. By the end, the entire orchestra's playing, that kind of thing. And so then that starts down the path of like, so how can that work? And we came up with this kind of new-ish type mechanic called that we call cascading production, in which you're getting trolls, you're recruiting trolls, because in the actual story of In the Hall of Mountain King, it is trolls in that story. And as you get them, you put them into a pyramid form. And as you get them, you activate the resources that troll has on that card and all the trolls below it. So as you can imagine, you get your bottom trolls, nothing. Your next trolls, you get a few more, and the next one, and then the top troll you get like all these, and that feels like the end of the song. And as soon as we had that, when we play tested it the very first time with that mechanic, everything else was entirely different than it is now, but everyone loved it. And well, this is cool. Like it was such a positive reaction for a first alpha play. This is one of the best reactions I've had to a first play test. I knew we were onto something pretty cool.
Yeah, that's great.
We had the same reaction to it. It was Sen actually that presented it to us on your behalf.
It was very funny.
None of this would have happened if it weren't for Sen.
Yeah, you should be up here, Sen.
Yeah, whatever.
Well, the quick story on that. So I was. We can go back to some more design stuff if we want, but to fast forward to the pitch, we all go to this one convention in Niagara Falls, and I have 2-year-old babies at home and twins, and so I had very limited time that I could be there, and we went out for dinner one night, and I think on the car drive I was telling you about this and the song and the reason, just exactly what I told you, and it builds and all this stuff, and I have it if you want to take a look at it, kind of thing.
I guess.
I get kind of whatever, I don't know if you want to look at it, and then it was okay, see, I'm leaving, and Helaina's like, well, In the Hall of Mountain King, you didn't show us the game. I'm like, I gotta go. And I had already given the game to a publisher that had expressed interest in it. So I actually had to ask Sen. Now I think by the time it was actually via Facebook Messenger or something. But what about In the Hall of Mountain King? I'm like, oh shoot. And so I said, Sen, can you go ask this other publisher to borrow this game that I had given them to take back and assess?
To Germany.
To Germany. It was a German publisher. And they're friendly with us, so they obviously said yes. And then Sen, through playing it at least twice, I think, during some pitches I had with other publishers.
I played it with you all week.
Then was able to explain it and played it with them on my behalf. So thank you, Sen.
Hey, you're welcome.
Checks in the mail.
Checks in the mail. Okay. Finder's fee. There's put the check in the mail. So we're going to skip over Kwanchai for a second because he doesn't get involved in the story till a little bit later. But what did you think, Helaina and Josh, when you first played the game? What were your initial thoughts?
Well, my initial thought was oh my God, this is something different and simple to learn, but different enough that I felt like I needed to have the game because it was something special, very, very special. It blew me away right away.
Helaina is a gut decider.
Mm-hmm.
If she plays a prototype of something, and she either knows right away that it's something that is for us or something that is not.
Like when she agreed to marry you.
Exactly.
Right. Okay,
That
got
was
it.
all gut.
All gut.
That was all gut.
And In the Hall of the Mountain King was immediate. That. Yes, this is for us. We want this.
So just to fill us all in on the other mechanisms in the game, other than the cascading resource management stuff, there's a whole board involved, right?
Yeah.
And so what's on the board, Josh?
Well,
Or even backtrack to the
Yes.
pitch.
Oh, okay.
Initially, when it was presented to us, each player was playing on their own little miniature board. So
Right.
each of us had our own plan view of a side view
Yes.
of a mountain, where sort of a cutaway view, and each of us is sort of. You have this amazing resource generation puzzle of the cascade thing going on, but each of us was independent from each other, creating a little tunnel network. So the whole point of the game is you are trying to move statues into better scoring positions on the mountain. That's largely what you're doing during the game.
Through these tunnels that
Through these tunnels that
That
you're
are made out
constructing.
of Tetronimos.
They're made out of Tetronimos, yes. So during the game, you are gathering resources by recruiting more trolls to trigger your cascade to get more stuff, and then you use that stuff to do stuff on your little board. So you're spending minerals to dig tunnels, you need little hammers to break through difficult spots on the mountain, you need rune crystals to cast spells, and you need carts to push carts through the tunnels that you've constructed to get them into better places on the mountain. So that's how you're spending all the little resources that you get. And we really, really love that cascading mechanism, but what we really wanted was for the players to be competing in the same space rather than to have their own little sideboard where you're all kind of disassociated from each other and having sort of a comparative ending of the game where at the end of the game you kind of look up and realize what everyone else had been doing over the course parts of the game. So we wanted to have everyone having their own engine, but using that separate engine to have a shared competition space in the middle.
And
So-
we had just been started to work on a big board as a link. I think part of the pitch was like, and we might be able to do a one board. Like that was an idea that
Yeah.
maybe we could figure that out. We didn't know necessarily how at the time, but maybe we could figure that out.
Yeah, and we did.
Right. And why did you want that?
I am very much about interactions between people when they're playing games. Like I don't ever play solo games because for me it's very social, and I felt like I was siloed a little bit when I was playing. And again, I needed to have the game. I loved it so much. I wanted more player interaction. I wanted to enjoy that social aspect of the game that I knew we would be able to get to, which we did very well.
Okay, so games design, games pitch.
Well, so I just want to tag onto that so much so that she loves interaction that I think upon signing, and I might have even been part of the contract, was that you desired or asked for or requested or demanded, whatever the word is,
Demand.
whatever the word is, a solo
Insistent.
/ co-op version
Right.
of the game.
Yes.
At which point we had a contract in front of us, and we're like, we'll sign it. Co-op is that's easy.
7 months later.
Yeah, literally 7 or 8 months later of just, that's all we worked on for games, is that co-op mode, and went through so many different iterations of different ideas and concepts. And we'd follow one idea of how it worked for a while, because you'd like try to fix it, and we found dead ends and everything. No, that doesn't work. Well, change it. No, then that doesn't work. And then this, and there were so many factors. And we're like, well, let's scrap that idea and go with it this way. And we like 3, 4, 5 times of totally different ideas. One was lava coming out of the mountain, and that was a thing. Another there was like a dragon that was flying around and stomping on things. Like there was so many different ideas, and it was literally the campaign had now started, and we still didn't know. And they're like, do we have a co-op? I'm like, don't say anything. Do not
Get
say
it
anything.
working.
And we were.
You
And it
were.
wasn't until
You were.
about close to halfway through the campaign on Kickstarter, I gave up and I said, no, we can't do it. Like I cannot do it. I can't test this game anymore because I can't figure it out. And Graham had one more idea. It literally is.
Yeah,
It literally
and it's
was.
so good.
And we're like, what about this? I'm like, I literally told him, if you want to test, you test it. I'm done. I can't do it anymore. It was too much. It was like I was exhausted on it. And he tried it, and he says it works. I'm like, come on. So I tried it. I'm like, it works. Let's see if it holds up. See where it's gonna break. And like, well, it works. And then we kept doing it. And then within a week, we were like, yeah, we can do it. We can announce it. We're confident that we can get it wrinkled, iron the wrinkles out, and get it. And so we were able to announce that as a stretch goal for solo and co-op.
Graham and Jay, hardest workers to make things work.
Yeah, definitely. Because I remember playing it at Chuck's, which is 6 months after the pitch.
Yeah.
We played the co-op
And
version.
it was nothing-
and
it was nothing like that.
And it's like,
Must have been.
That was one of the lava
it's
at that
not
point.
so
I
great.
don't know if it was-
No, it wasn't lava.
Dwarves?
It was Dwarf Warriors.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was not so great.
Yeah.
It was
But it
not so
turned
great.
out to be amazing in the end.
Hey,
and in
right?
fact, we play it with our kids all the time. They
co-op
really,
version.
yeah, the co-op
Nice.
version.
Yeah.
They really love it.
I played with numerous gamers who played the other game, and they prefer the co-op. And I'm like, wow, that's
So good.
awesome.
It's really cool.
Yeah.
So let's bring Kwanchai into the conversation. So,
Hey.
hey, buddy.
Oh,
So,
not just eye candy.
yeah, not just eye candy, not just chin, not just all the chin.
Even eye candy.
All this chin.
Not even eye candy. You're so mean. So tell us a little bit, first of all, about yourself, Kwanchai, and then I'm going to ask
Sure.
Josh and Helaina some questions.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm an illustrator, mostly in tabletop. I've done about, I think the number that we counted for this trip was 88 different things.
Very Asian.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Very Asian, that's true.
Very Asian.
Different card expansions, things,
Sure,
it's
sure,
single
different
projects.
boxes or whatever.
Yeah.
Different boxes, yeah. So, and then in the Hall of Mountain King was one of the more recent things in the last year. It was also, on a personal level, a push for me looking for art projects that weren't human figures just drawn really well on the cover.
Right.
Because that was a thing I was scared of doing, and I wanted to just, so trolls aren't really human, but it's still, it's kind of, tangential, but I did a troll game, I did a game called High Rise, which was just buildings on the cover, and then Bosk, which was just big trees and small humans. And then Josh and Helaina, we had a meeting at Gen Con, I think, and they said, we really like what you, and I said, where do I sign?
No, but
There
it's,
was a little bit of a caveat there. I know the
but from that other
caveat.
panel, you were talking about how you had trolls.
Yeah, so the real story is that I have a list of games that I want to illustrate. One of them is just number 5. It just says trolls. ... And
It
so
was really weird.
yeah, so when we sat
It was
down,
really weird. Yeah.
I do often say that I'm busy as a way just to possibly skip out of a thing I just don't have the interest in doing.
And he did say that.
And I
like,
did
right
say
off the
that
bat.
because I was actually busy. And then you said it was trolls, and I was like, in my head, I
Damn.
was like, oh, how do I say this without sounding too like eager? How do I not sound like that? Like, you know,
It was really,
kiddish.
really brief meeting.
Yeah. It was very-
So it's about trolls. I'm in.
I'm in. Okay.
Yeah,
What do I say?
it's pretty quick.
Yeah, I just wanted to do a game about trolls. I don't know why.
But not cute trolls.
Not cute trolls, like
No, they're not
interesting, like fairy tale, kind of dark, like Hans Christian Andersen, sort of dark in the way that Anyway, yeah. So trolls.
No, it's funny because the prototype I make, and for those that are game designers out here, I just grab free clip art from online, and I just literally search troll clip art. I usually actually say troll clip art, and I look for it, and I found the cutest one. And
It was cute.
And it was cute.
very cute.
It was a cute one,
Yeah,
and it does help with playing the game, right? And when they said that they got Kwanchai, they made sure to say, and it's not cute art, just so you know, it's not cute trolls. They're like angry trolls. I'm like, okay, cool.
Not too angry.
Oh, whatever. I didn't understand.
No,
A
we
little
talked
more
about that,
bitter.
We didn't, pardon me?
Bitter trolls. Upset
They just
trolls.
wanted their home
Triumphant.
back. They just wanted their home
They needed to not be too monstery. Like that's
Yeah,
kinda a
that's right.
direction.
Yeah, and I'd never drawn any kind of fantasy creatures that weren't like really cute and really like big eyes and I'm cute. So that was a real challenge for me that I was like excited to take on.
Catacombs?
Catacombs is like super cute.
Yeah.
Like cute trolls.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
So you really wanted to embrace your dark side.
In a way, just something kind of mysterious and cool. And the idea of the song is sort of foreboding in a way. Not in an evil way or a maniacal way, but in a way that's like sort of intense. Hence the reds, hence the dark shadows.
Move the cursed mountains so they can see
very
the full box.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, we get to see the cover, and on the cover we see, the Hall of Mountain King, a really nice lettermark that Josh probably did.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. In copper foil, and then Kwanchai's art beneath that. And you're catching the light really
Is
nicely
this
there.
an audio podcast or a video?
It can be. So we do the audio as well as the video.
Ah.
And then there's that art is just it makes you feel like you're in the tunnels with those trolls, which is really cool. So
Yeah.
really quite enjoyed that. It's great.
Yeah, they're coming in out of the cold because the whole notion is that they're coming home to rebuild their ruined ancestral home.
Yeah, reclaim it, right?
Yeah, they're coming home and into the warmth of the tunnel from the cold behind them.
Josh, when you first saw the prototype from a graphic design perspective, because you are the graphic designer on the project,
Yes. I
What-
kept one icon.
yes, what were the problems that you saw from the initial? What caught your eye,
I mean,
and
all-
what said this has got to change?
There's nothing that needed drastic changing as far as graphic design goes. One of the neat aspects of the game is that when you gain resources, they go right onto the troll cards because you need to spend that stuff off of those trolls so that they can regenerate the stuff later. So that was a neat aspect of it that needs to be preserved. And this is a game where it's all very, I don't want to say immediate, but it's all very obvious. Sort of the actions you're taking are very reflected in the way the components are managed on the board.
Yes.
So I'm building a tunnel, you take a tunnel and you put it on the board. I am spending a crystal to cast a spell, you actually put the crystal onto the spell. Everything is used in the way that it should be in the game. So all of the componentry needed to reflect that usability and ergonomics. I think the best thing about the prototype was that it was clean. It was almost devoid of art. It was very, it was just colors, lines, numbers. So that was basically it for the prototype.
And little icons for the resources and stuff.
Yeah, and little icons for the resources. So
And the trolls.
The
Cute
cute
trolls.
yes, but mostly it was just white with functional features on it. So I always prefer that to start from, so I don't have anything affecting my preconceptions of what the layout and the design should be. I like it to be as spare as possible, and it was pretty easy to sort of put together the structural underpinnings of everything to then pass those templates over to Kwanchai and say, hey, this is the space that we need graphics to be in, and this is the space that you have to put art into.
Yeah, and working with a graphic designer who's also like a game whiz, it makes it so much easier to know that these spaces are the spaces, and it lets me know where the meaningful illustrations need to be and in what way. And that's not something every art director can necessarily convey if they're not a graphic designer also.
Right. So the neat thing about Josh, for those of you who don't know, is he's not only a graphic designer, he's also an illustrator and formidable game designer. So Josh and Jay and I have designed a bunch of games together, and
a whiz.
And a whiz.
Yeah.
Lots of
Formidable whiz.
superlatives getting thrown around here about you, Josh. Have you taken a formidable whiz ever?
A couple today. Wait, I will say one challenge of the graphic design for this game was the game board.
Yes.
It needs to be readable in like 3 or 4 different ways at a time. So it needs to look good. You need to be able to see the different tiers on the mountain, and it needs to.
It's kind of like a dartboard. It kind of gets worth more and more as you get closer to the
Yeah.
center, and you need
Concentric.
to see each of those.
Right, so the
rings
mountain,
of-
when everyone had their own player board, we were looking at it from the side, so you can easily see where the tiers of the mountain were getting higher and higher. Now that we're seeing it a shared board from the top view, we think of it less like you're ascending to the peak of the mountain and more like you're actually sort of burrowing into the heart of the mountain. And the graphic design sort of, like you said, is like a dartboard with different concentric rings leading into the heart of the mountain, which is the most valuable space to get them. So the board needed to be able to divide those tiers up visually for the player and also have all these different icons of different things that you can interact with as you're digging your tunnels around on the board. And also you need to be able to lay tunnel tiles onto that without interrupting the way that things look. So there was a sort of a visual challenge there to add, from Kwanchai's perspective, I suppose, to add detail to it without obscuring the functionality of it, and from a graphic design perspective, just making everything readable without it being confusing, which is sort of a general.
You actually added some really cool value in the tunnels, because sometimes you have to place tunnels down, and then you have to know how much you're scoring, and you have to know what color. Like later on, you might move a statue to somewhere, and you have to sometimes lift up a tunnel to see what concentric circle is underneath it. If there's a lot of tunnels around it, you're like, what am I on? What color am I on? And that got a little annoying. And so he came up with a great idea of actually there's a circle in spots on the
Like a punch hole right
punch
through
hole.
the top.
Yes, yeah, punch hole right through it, which is like brilliant.
Just pick up
Great
the
idea.
statue and no, that's the color that's on.
Yeah, it's great.
Done and done. So let's move on to your role, Helaina, in terms of we're rolling up the campaign, we're spinning it up. What goes into that? That's like an incredible
That's a whole other
bunch
panel.
of stuff, right? I know you did a panel on that.
I just did.
Yeah.
We have the tapes.
Roll the tape. But let's talk about it just in terms of with everybody else here. What was everybody's role? You're kind of like the field general.
Yeah.
In terms of telling Jay and Graham what to do, getting Josh to prepare all the stuff for the page. Kwanchai needs to meet his art deadlines. How do you do that? How do you manage that?
We have to have a timeline, and for me, like, I need to see it visually, lay everything out, know when things have to be done by. You know, we talk every minute of the day about
It's
what's
handy
next,
living together.
Yeah,
it
right?
really
Yeah.
is. It really is. We talk every minute of the day about what's happening next, who we need to talk to. Do we need to talk to Graham and Jay? Do we need to talk to Kwanchai? And so once I have a initial timeline laid out, it's just a matter of meeting each of those expectations, I guess you could call them. I'm very much a teacher, that never
Yes.
goes away. So meeting those expectations at the right time. So it starts with being organized, and then thinking about, Graham and Jay have to do their thing. Then I have to get Josh to lay everything out, and then he has to talk to Kwanchai about the art. We need to make sure the art is done by a certain date. And typically everything has to be done at least a month and a half before we go to Kickstarter.
And it's not?
Typically. But we do that so that we can get a prototype, a nice prototype made, so we can send it out to previewers so that they can take a look at the game and do their videos. They tend to like the game to them at least a month before, so they can learn the rules and get a few plays in before they actually film themselves doing
Yeah,
the
they need
review.
time to make their content.
That's right. So we go from that to, you know, the month before the campaign is sort of quiet. You know, Josh
Building the
is
page.
Josh is doing the page,
not for me,
but
it's
all
not.
the art pretty much is done, and you know, it's more organization and coming up with the stretch goals that we're going to be doing, you know, and laying
And
the
going back
page
to Kwanchai
out.
for more art for those
Right,
stretch
right.
goals.
Yeah.
How much of the
Talking to Jay and Graham about, hey,
what else can we add
is
for
this
this?
possible?
Yeah, can we do this?
Yeah.
How much of the art is for Kickstarter is done in advance? Like, do you have like a few stretch goals like with the art of it like done, or do you only once the actual, you know, stretch goals met, do you then create the art saying crushed and here's the next stretch goal?
It's a mix. You can't always predict exactly where you're going to land. I mean, you can't at all predict where you're going to land. So you try to have optimistic expectations and then have that art created before. But if
then
you
you
do
tweak it.
if you do better
Yeah.
than you expected, then there's room for more stretch goals to be added, and then that's when you go back to Kwanchai and say, hey, got room for more trolls today?
And sometimes that doesn't work, so we have like placeholder art on the campaign.
silhouette or
and-
something.
Yeah, and hopefully by the end of the campaign we can trade that out swap it out for the actual
real deal.
art. So we try to have as much ready before as we can that we can think that is going to happen during the
Okay.
campaign. But-
Can Jay, Kwanchai, and Josh cover your ears for a sec? Just cover your ears. So Helaina, which of the three were the hardest to wrangle during the campaign? What do you?
I can hear you.
Yeah, really, eh? And why is that?
Why is...
Why is that?
What was the question?
I don't know.
What happened?
They're not.
It's a really interesting thing running a business and having a relationship
Yeah.
outside of business. It's hard to.
You
it's
can't tell
hard
me
to,
what to do, but...
She really can't.
Well, I do, but at the same time, like he's my husband. I
Yeah.
don't want to hurt him.
No, of course not.
But you still have to do your job.
Right?
I have a point to that.
Yes.
So in choosing clients as an illustrator, I come in halfway at the very most, usually on where the project is at. It's been signed, it's mostly been developed, and we're gonna do art and then some development, rulebook wraps up, and then Kickstarter or publishing, right? And so at my point when I come in, at least having had some experience now, someone like Helaina, who's sort of like running the show, that person is like the most important person because it's my coworker for the next foreseeable 3 or 4 months. And if you can have a miserable 3 or 4 months if that person isn't responsive, doesn't know how to light a fire under you without being nice to an artist.
Yeah, right.
And it was fantastic working with them because they're it just you worry when you go into a project, not when you're smiling and like signing a paper, but like what happens when things kind of go wrong. How good are people under pressure?
Right.
And it was I mean, there was some pressure points and
Sure,
worked
there
them out,
always
and it
is.
was like, yeah, it was really great to like. That's more important as an artist perspective than whatever the release looks like or whatever accolades you might get for the art or the game.
Yeah.
I think it's like I'm really choosy these days about who that point man or woman
Right.
would be. And so,
So, talking about point men and point women, was working for or working with an artistic director that is also an illustrator and graphic designer, is that different than working with a publisher who may have no sense of art? What do you think, Kwanchai?
I think there's two things. There's one, Josh has experience as a graphic designer anyway, and then there's a side thing of knowing how to just handle artist personalities. And some people know that because they've come from adjacent industries, video games or whatever, and they know, oh, this is how we handle artists. Build your own buffer into your schedule so you don't give them the real deadline. Be not like start with the compliment all the time for no reason.
You know about this?
Yeah, it's really important. And if you have no idea, then someone who
The
isn't
ego.
experienced,
Yeah.
they give you the real deadline, for example, and I blow the deadline by a couple days, and then we're in hot water because everything compounds all the way until the release isn't out for Christmas, and you're screwed, right?
Right.
So, working with the graphic designer there's twofold, because one, he's an artist as well.
Yeah.
And secondly, he just knows his stuff. So that is markedly different. And in fact, most of my choice making about the clients I take nowadays is about who the graphic designer is and who is the if that person's different, point man or point woman, the person I'm dialoguing with, that's really important for my sanity because that's my coworker. I'm alone. That's the person, So yeah.
Yeah, Jay, bringing you back into the fold. So, hi. When the campaign started, what were you and Graham doing all the way out on the West Coast? I know Kwanchai is also on the West Coast, but
It was just co-op.
just the co-op.
Yeah, we're just
Everything
co-op.
else was locked down.
From no, but every once in a while there'd be something like, hey, what about? I think we came up with the idea of like we could have some sort of roles or some like each player had roles, and then we ended up calling them champions, and then eventually like, what are them? Like, can we start working on those? And we hadn't tested them yet. We just had this idea that that'd be kind of neat if each player had these different kind of roles.
Like
And so then
asymmetries.
we had to, and adjacently to creating and testing and figuring out co-op, we had to play the non-co-op version and figure out these champions as well at the same time. So that was, and other little things. There would be a new workshop or something. We need a new workshop. So
Yeah.
whatever it is for a
Right.
stretch goal.
So, was there a lot of development on your part?
Yeah, one of the most, just mostly because of the co-op is most like. Besides that, there was still definitely a bunch as we got to the full board and working on figuring out. For the longest time, we had wanted 2 full boards double-sided.
Yeah.
We wanted
Right, that was a big
2-player
thing.
board, 3-player board, 4-player board, 5-player board, because of one of the ideas we had was that there's this thing called rubble in the game, and it makes it harder to tunnel through, and we wanted to kind of wedge rubble in between each player, and so with 4 different boards, you can do that. You can have that. If we tried to reduce the boards, then it was challenging, and that became a cost prohibitor that we had to go to 1 board, so double-sided board. So then we're like, okay, so I guess 2 to 3 player on one side, 4 to 5 player on the other side, I guess is what we'll do. But then it was a huge challenge figuring out the balance so that it's not 100% equal, like everything is equal, but if you're starting in this spot, there's a very specific spot on the board. For 5 players, you start in these spots. For 4 players, you start in these spots. But it has to feel somewhat fair. You can't say, I'll only play a game, but only if I start in that spot, because that spot's obviously way better than any other spot. And so figuring out that balance was super tricky. It
We
was
had
super
symmetry-itis
mathy
at
and
first.
Symmetry-itis?
Yeah, at first we started off feeling like, okay, everyone has to be like 4 spaces away from a
Statue,
workshop spot,
yeah,
3
yeah.
spaces away from a statue, 2 spaces
Cool.
away from
Right.
a gold coin and stuff, and everything had to be very balanced. And then we.
And if you had 1 board per player count, that was very easy.
Yeah, super easy.
And then once it become 1 board for 2 player counts, that was super hard.
Right.
But then we.
How'd you figure that out?
Well, we sort of shrugged off the notion that it needed to be symmetrical, and it just had to feel.
This one might have more resources
Everyone had to
around
feel
it.
competitive.
But this
Right.
one has
They
statues a bit
didn't have the
closer,
same
so-
advantages and
Right.
disadvantages.
Yeah. So advantages and disadvantages that balance each thing out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If not perfectly, then at least perceptually.
Yeah,
right?
and I've been searching for the best spot, and I haven't been able to find it yet.
Right. So you did a pretty good job. You did a pretty good job.
It's maintained pretty good.
Helaina, can I ask you about the current trend towards 100% making sure there's a solo mode in the game? You said you're not a real solo player, and yet you insisted on a solo mode in the game. Why?
I think that it really comes.
Contractually demanded.
It really boils down to people feeling like they're getting their money's worth out of a game.
Okay.
When we buy a game, we will play it maybe once or twice. A new game we'll play once or twice. Unless we can play it with our children, then we get to have more plays out of it. But typically games are $50, $75. You know, there are games that we've spent $100 on.
That you've only
And-
played once or twice.
Right.
Some of them,
And-
yeah. I mean, you hope it goes more than that, but it doesn't always.
Yeah.
And you know, it's not like the days when we started playing strategy games back in the day when we played Catan 500 times. We don't do that anymore. So when I look at a game now, I look at what the cost is going to be, and does it make sense to have this game, people spend $75 on it, and they feel like they might only get 1 or 2 plays out of it. How can we change that so that they feel like they're getting their money's worth and that they can take it off of their shelf at any point in time and play the game? And to me, that's the solo.
Right.
There is a pretty decently sized
It's
solo
the biggest or
market.
second biggest.
It's the
forum?
second biggest guild on BGG.
Right.
There's
So,
like 30,000
Right.
odd people. Yeah.
And then
Big
all of a
consideration.
sudden, not just that, you start opening up being able to market your game in a different way. So
different
before it
places.
was a 2 to 5 player game. Well, now it's also a solo, and like you said, I have 30,000 people now that I can bring this game to. Here's a game that you're gonna love.
And
it's
co-op
got a
that
solo.
also opens it up
and
to
that,
other people.
and that opens it up as well. And to, you know, again, opening it up to now we play this game with our children, and we play the co-op mode. So it makes the game so much broader in terms of who will play it.
I'm so
You know?
curious when the reviews start coming for this game, as far as like, because they, I don't know which version they're gonna review or
Yeah.
both or.
Probably
Yeah.
going to be the competitive.
Probably.
Like, I feel like people are gonna
I mean,
Well,
hopefully
I
they'll
think
tell you.
there will be some people who I send the game out to specifically because they do solo games.
Right, but you're required to know and understand the competitive
That is true.
before you
Yes,
can play
that is
the
true.
co-op.
That
So
is true.
that would be at least people's first step.
Yeah, very, very cool. Is there anything that, you know, now that the campaign's done, the pledge manager is closed? Is it closed?
It's been closed and reopened twice.
Right.
It's closed.
It's closed.
It's closed
We're
now.
closing it.
We're
It's
gonna
done
open it
deal.
for,
Done deal.
I've given
Is there
the
anything
manufacturers.
that you like looking at it and going, hey, how come we didn't do that better? What can we do better? Are you satisfied? I mean, you saw it
It's a
today. You saw the box
First
today
time,
for the
yeah,
first
the
time.
box, no,
Blown away?
it's so cool.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
I feel like this team was so amazing. Graham and Jay, I know that they, every time I asked them to do something, they were biting their tongues. I know it. But they were amazing to work with because specifically they wanted their game to be the best it could possibly be. And obviously, they work very well together, which was really nice. But just everybody who worked on this game, including our manufacturer, who it's Gameland, they've been so fantastic. Great communication, good prices. The quality is unbelievable. Just from the beginning to now, we haven't fulfilled the game yet, so we'll see what happens with that. But so far, it's just been amazing, and I can't. There's nothing I have been able to come up with that I would have changed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
gameplay wise, not at all. Like, I love it.
There's,
I love playing
there's
it.
actually
I
a
love
couple
watching
more funny stories actually about the collaborative work that went in this. We had sent them this something we had thought would be an expansion and or a stretch goal, and it was called the Great Halls. And if you can create your tunnels in such a way that you can make this shape of these Great Halls that sit off to the side, you can place a Great Hall over it as long as there's no spaces underneath it. And it was like, and it kind of gave you something else to do if something else wasn't working for you or whatever. And we thought that was kind of a neat little stretch goal or something. And they liked it so much, they're like, no, it's actually a viable strategy that it's going to be part of the base game. Like, this is actually kind of mandatory, because if this happens, this person's screwed. He needs another way to do something.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's pretty cool. And the other thing I thought was really neat, though, again, a collaborative thing, was the original game that we supplied them that had tunnels. Each tunnel piece had a different colored statue printed right on the tunnel piece.
Right.
And so there's 3 different colored statues and whatnot. And it was frustrating, even for us, but we did. Again, when we're designers, we're like, the publisher will figure it out. And they did, by giving it back to us to figure it out. But the issue was, because there's so many different shapes of Tetris pieces, tunnels, you kind of have to spread them all out. And then eventually someone's like, I want the L shape, but is there an L-shaped orange? Is there an L-shaped orange left? And if they're not organized nicely, you're literally like, and it slows the game down, and it's a bit frustrating. And they're like, can we get rid of that somehow? We want to have a game tray and things are stacked in, like each shape has its own little pile, and you just grab it and go. And we're like, well, I don't know, how do we do that? Like, then those were at the time called, those were the pedestals, right?
They were printed on the tiles.
They were printed on
Right.
the tiles. So that means we have to somehow take the pedestals off the tile. So then they became components, and then we came up with a cool way of getting them, and then we came up with a cool way of limiting them. And everything just kind of kept going like this, to click, 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 click.
Yeah.
And now it's a really cool new way of doing it way better presentation value for seeing the tiles, because they're not printed on there, and more variable, and you're not as frustrated as much. And it was a win-win-win scenario. It was great.
Yeah.
3 wins.
Tell us about game trays, just quickly. So how is the relationship with game trays built? What is going to come in the box that isn't a game tray? And why is it important for you guys to have a game trays tray in there.
Because people gobble that up.
Yeah. I mean, other than the fact that people really like them usually.
You know what
Why
we're
do they
talking
like
about? You know what we're
them?
talking about with game trays?
Yeah.
It's an actual brand with a
Game
Z at the
trays,
end.
yeah, it's a
'Cause that
brand
means it's
of
cool.
insert, plastic, what's it called? Vacuum formed insert that goes into the game. So
Super custom made for
super
this
custom
game.
made, very specifically designed for the game. We like to put them in games when they contribute to the functionality of the game, not just for the storage of the game. So for In the Hall of the Mountain King, there's this tunnel supply that you need to create at the beginning of the game. Well, here it is.
Yeah, imagine each of those was in a baggie
Yeah.
shape and dumping them out and like setting
Like
up the
having a
game.
Sorting them.
Sorting them or whatever.
Outside. Yeah, and then there's the great halls that Jay mentioned that you can sort of put over your little Tetris caverns that you've created. And Noah, who's the genius behind game trays, figured out this notion that, well, this will save table space too. You can prop them up like that, and then you have a little display of those for the
Yeah,
for the
Noah's
game.
Cool as that.
amazing
That's
to
so
work
cool.
with.
Yeah.
And that's just one. There's another one there with,
That's just one.
with the
There's 3 other
resources,
trays.
so you don't have to spread the resources everywhere. They're in a nice little buckets.
Yeah.
Makes setup and tear down super easy.
Exactly. So it's for us the functionality of having this be just like, here's your resources, here's your tunnels.
Let's
It
play.
speeds setup so quickly. You
And
can
clean
pass
up
around
too,
the table,
right?
clean up as well. You can pass around if you need to.
We started with Noah on our previous game,
For
which is
Endeavor.
Age of Sail. And one of the things that we were big fans of the game when it was originally published, one of the things that frustrated us the most was how much time it took us to set up and then clean up the game.
Yeah, create that building market every time.
And so when we
Alright.
saw that Noah was doing really cool things, we contacted him and said, "Here is our problem. How can you solve it?" And he came up with something relatively quickly, which was nice. And it just the functionality of it is really, really amazing. And so we continue to use his services because
Yeah.
he's fantastic.
Yeah, he's doing great work right now on a game for us called Fossilis. It's coming
Yes.
out.
Yeah,
It's like-
because that needs
that needs it. In
needs
that
that
case,
trait
he's
just
actually
to
making
work.
a 3D game board for
Yeah.
us, which is really
Excellent.
And then people have the opportunity to buy this afterwards.
Absolutely. We're just working on it right now. So the retail game does not come with the trays because it would be cost prohibitive in terms of selling the game.
Yeah.
So,
which is a nice cardboard insert.
right. So the
Valley
retail
of
game
Death,
comes
or-
with a
Baggies.
plastic cardboard insert, and then Noah will be selling the trays on his website
Very
after
cool.
the game comes out.
Very cool. Last couple questions from me, and then we'll open it up to the audience. So, what's happening now? I know you've recently hired Sean Jacquemin to work as part of the Burnt Island KBTG crew. What's his role? I know he can't be here this weekend, but what's his role, and how is he taking this past what you and Kwanchai and Jay have done to make it even further in the market?
Me. Mostly just makes jokes.
He told me that this morning, and
Eats
that's
lunch.
And he would probably say that too.
yes.
He has jokes and makes lunch.
he
He
eats
is
Anyway, go on.
okay.
He's our digital marketer. That's sort of his main role. He's also assisting with game development. He has a great mind for that.
He's amazing.
His library, his
Really
mental
fantastic.
library of games and their mechanisms is outstanding. He's really played hundreds, if not thousands, of games. So when we get a submission of a game design that we're testing out, he can say, kind of done before, I know this from somewhere else,
Yes.
this feels unique, stuff like that. And we can trust him in that respect. But his biggest role is in the digital marketing.
Yeah.
That's his expertise.
And
He's
his
a wonderful
photography
writer.
skills are wonderful.
His
Unbelievable.
photography
Yeah.
skills are incredible. So he's filling a niche in our company.
Yeah, it's really neat to see where everybody's come from. So, Helaina, originally you were a,
Teacher.
and now you are a,
Publisher.
right.
Yeah.
Josh, you actually went to school for graphic design?
Very briefly.
Very briefly.
Yeah.
I don't
And
need
then,
this.
They couldn't contain me,
right? They couldn't hold it all in.
or I couldn't stay there. Anyway, yeah, they wouldn't keep me.
Right. And Kwanchai, did you go to art college?
I did.
You
yeah,
did.
I did.
And Jay, you work for Best Buy.
I work for Best Buy, yeah.
And you teach game design
I
at...
was working in training department for a long time, and there's a lot of game design skills that come with the that I used in my
Right.
training.
And then Sean used to be a game guru at Snakes and Lattes.
Yeah.
Yep.
And he writes for the Daily Worker Placement and things like that. So,
Writes for and owns.
yes, and owns and photography and all that kind of stuff. So it's really neat to see where everybody's come from, that, you know, game design schools exist, but not a lot of people actually graduated from those types.
I was tutoring like after school kids. There's like a part-time job tutoring after school kids for a long time, and then I remember Belfort came out, and Josh, Sen, Jay, your names are all in the box.
Right.
And I remember thinking, I'd never done a board game before. I wasn't even illustrating. I was still in art school. And I remember thinking, these are cool board game guys. Their names are showing up on more than one game, and I wish I could do that.
Really?
And now look at you.
No, I mean seriously. I mean,
That's
yeah,
awesome. Thanks, man.
yeah, I mean that was like before it was even a twinkle in my eye that I could maybe do anything related to board games.
It was really funny that so Sen and I made Belfort, and then the publisher hired Josh, and we had no idea who he was from in person, but we had known some of his stuff he had done, and then the launch was coming up, and we found out, I think somehow through that process we found out you live in Toronto. We're like, what? Really? You live in Toronto? And then we all met.
We were living in Hamilton at the time.
Yeah, we all met at Snakes and Lattes,
Snakes and Lattes,
for the
I
first time.
remember that.
Yeah, for the launch of Belfort, and then since then we've done a lot
It
of
still
stuff
comes
together.
up on my Facebook memories every now and
Oh
then.
yeah. I'm much
Back when I was
skinnier
skinny.
then. Also much taller. No, I'm not taller at all. So let's open up the questions to the audience. I can't see them, so you can pick the questions.
Okay. Ooh. Okay, that was quick.
I have a nerdy project management question. You mentioned visual timelines. You're very visual. How do you make those?
With the pen.
So visual timelines. How do you make visual
I
timelines?
I do a lot of stuff online, but there are certain things that I need to actually draw out myself. Once I do that, then I put it in a spreadsheet and move from there. But that's how I, old-fashioned.
Do you do it like Gantt, like with like a bar?
I do.
With dates at the top,
Yeah.
that kind of idea?
Up and down.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
Is
each
that how you used
task-
to-
Each task is down the side?
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you used to plan courses like that? Because that's how I plan
Yes,
courses.
that's exactly how I planned my classes.
That's so funny. Other questions from the audience? Yeah, go ahead.
So another boring project management question. So there's like a lot of balls in the air when you're like designing a game and wanting to self-publish and stuff. Like, how do you just like organize that all so it's not just like blah, in your head?
Well, it's always like that in my head.
Oh, okay.
But it's really getting down to what is the first thing I need to do, and then what's the last thing I need to do, and then I sort of work backward from there. I know at the end I'm gonna end up with a product, and so how am I going, a product in a store, so how am I gonna get that product into the store? I'm going to somehow have to raise funds for it, create it, somehow manufacturing, a designer, an artist, a graphic designer, and so on, and then moving back from there, planning out all the things I need to know before. How much is it going to cost me? Because when I start a Kickstarter campaign, I need to know all of that information, manufacturing, fulfillment, and so on. So really, and art, yes, that's a huge part of it. But really, it's like, where am I starting? Where am I ending? And then moving backward and getting to the
Goal oriented.
start. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
very much so. Any other questions?
I've got so many.
Oh, yeah, no, go ahead.
I don't want to hog the floor here.
No, but you have the conch.
Thank you. So I'm a teacher. I used to be a publisher. So I'm
Oh,
coming from the
wow,
opposite
yeah.
You're going in the opposite direction,
Wow.
sir.
But so this dynamic here, everything you've been talking about, working together on this project, that's exactly the kind of dynamic that I try to reproduce in group work for students. So the fact that you have teaching experience and you're now doing this, go back and imagine yourself when you were in grade 5. What skills do you wish your teacher had helped you learn then that would benefit where you are now?
That's a great question. So what skills?
Collaboration.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I left teaching. I didn't even really leave teaching. I'm still technically a teacher, but I'm on a leave. But in my class at the beginning of the year, every year, I use a cooperative game to teach kids how they all come to the table with their own skills and skill sets, and how they can collaborate using those skill sets. Yes, sometimes one person comes out as a leader. Yes, sometimes one person is sitting at the back and just, letting things happen, and you sort of move along. But for me, kids need to learn how to collaborate, because in the real world, that's what we do. And I don't think that we do enough of that in the classroom.
So
part of
that's
that-
they
what I
do
would
it
say.
as a group, but we don't show them how to do it.
Exactly, yes.
And
part of that what they learn is seeing things from other people's perspective and empathize.
Yes.
They can understand
Absolutely.
where they're coming from.
Josh, what do you think about an answer for that as
Which
grade
I
5?
personally learned in grade 5.
Yeah.
That would apply. Probably time management is something that is my well, you know it because it's true.
I knew it.
It's something that I struggle with.
Yeah.
It's,
Really?
I am a creative, distractible person.
Yeah.
So.
I remember when I went to when I first met you at one of the cons and we talked about deadlines and you told me that you blew some deadlines and the margin by which you blew them. I was so relieved. I was like, ooh, okay.
I'm not the worst in the industry.
Yeah, I'm not the most bad person.
Right.
That would be a
You
fairly
gotta build those buffers in.
I have an answer to that that's a little bit tangential, if you don't mind. Specific to board games, I felt like this project was unique to me in that when, as an artist, I can kind of wax more poetic. There's a lot less curved balls and twists and turns from the artist putting in their work as compared to everyone else in his team, I think. So I'll just be a little more poetic. But there's something about this project that felt for me like everyone was taking a step together. So you look, there's all these people that are offering different things, and I'm just coming in as the artist. But as an artist, I'm looking for where are people at and what kind of a step are we all risking together? And sometimes you meet a publisher and they're like up here and you're just being kind of slotted in. They have a whole bunch of products that they're going to do that year. And sometimes it's a brand new publisher who's like, whoa, you're going to be on this project. Do you do anything you want? And that's also not good, right?
Right.
And so part of when we sat down, I remember feeling like, oh, this is like, I'm in a sort of similar space in my career as Burnt Island is, and to do that's so that's something specific to this project where I felt like we're all sort of taking the same amount of step, and that was really exciting and was really inspiring to put into the project in terms of the art.
cool. Jay, what about you? Anything?
A little bit similar. Like I teach game design to college-y type people, kids. Still kids. They feel like kids. But yeah, I think the fact that they have to play test each other's games, actually, that's part of their marks is play testing other people's games that they're designing and developing board games. They really have to learn, and we try to teach about how to give and how to receive feedback.
Yes.
And that's where a lot of the empathy comes in and how important feedback is. And I hope that that's something that they take away from that. And obviously, the earlier you can get that kind of message in would be better. That, giving and receiving feedback is great. Somebody cares enough to give you feedback about something you're creating. It's pretty cool. But there's proper ways to give it and there's proper ways to receive it.
Yeah, let's talk to Kwanchai about that, about art school and feedback.
We'll have that tomorrow.
Yeah, that's tomorrow's con. Any other questions? I know you might have more, but
I have another one.
yeah, go ahead.
So sometimes you're gonna hit roadblocks and stuff while designing a game. So what do you do when you're feeling a little bit discouraged by the whole process, to kind of get yourself back on track?
I work on another game.
Yeah.
I just go to another game and I start designing, playtesting another game for a bit. I'm like, I can't playtest Mountain King this week. I gotta work on something else.
Like when the co-op was kind of failing
down.
faster than you could handle,
Yeah.
you just moved to something else.
You have to be willing to set it aside for a bit and not force yourself to think about it.
If you start not liking it, that's not really a fun thing to be doing. But sometimes you have deadlines and sometimes you gotta do things.
Yeah.
You gotta muscle through it.
Do you have one design on the go or multiples?
I have one design on the go,
Yeah.
a couple more in my head, but it's more that I'm my friends are just you gotta make a game, just get that game,
Well,
it's kind of being underscored here at the conference, get that to the table. It's okay,
Yeah.
gotta get that game,
Right.
the one that I want to,
Another
that's
option,
my pony.
instead of setting it aside, is maybe to work on it with someone, or at least have someone that is familiar with it so you can bounce ideas off of, and someone who's willing to lend you ideas or share ideas with you that they don't mind you using. Jay and I and Sen are members of a group called the Game Artisans of Canada, and
Okay.
we design together. We have meetups where many of us attend, and when we go, we play test each other's games and offer feedback. And the understanding is, you are giving ideas for free. You're not expecting to have any credit. You're not expecting to be considered to be a part of the development of the game. It's just you're there to help each other. And there's give and take in both directions, of course. But having a just a group of people who are similarly minded as far as game design goes that you can play games with and design games with is so valuable, because sometimes the idea is right there. It's just you're not landing on it, and someone else might be able to be inspired by your game to come up with the idea that's going to push it a little further. So you could let it simmer for a while, or you could show it to some other people. Maybe they'll be able to.
Kwanchai, what about you from an art perspective? What about when you get really, the inspiration just isn't coming?
So that's most of the case.
Not with this one. Not with trolls.
Well, just in general as a workflow, it's mostly off, right? And then there's some moments of on. And so the on moments have to be when I'm sketching, and the off moments have to be when I'm just rendering out the arm or like the club or whatever. And it also means knowing when to take breaks, because that's something I'm still learning how to do.
That's a really interesting point, because it is like inspiration isn't something that we, all of us as creatives, feel all the time. Like, people think we do, but we really don't. It's those flashes of inspiration when and a lot of it is when we're kibitzing with each other, when we're talking to each other. When Jay and I are walking from our hotel to here, which is like a 15-minute walk, we just kind of say, oh, what about that for this other thing that we're doing? We saw something in Artist Alley today. They were going, how could that be a game?
Yeah, true.
Right? And it's just those types of things that I think we can together come up with things. So find people who you like to talk to, I think is a good way of putting that.
Or immerse yourself in other creative mediums, not necessarily board games.
Yeah.
That helps too.
Cool. Any last minute questions from anybody? Do you still have another one? You can go ahead and ask it.
So many.
Go ahead.
How much time do you usually leave for playtesting? How can you know how much testing?
It varies by game, of course, but there are small, simple games, and there are heavy, complex games.
Well, sometimes the small, simple games also require a lot of.
That's true. Simplicity is hard to whittle down to sometimes. It varies wildly. We've had games where development was years upon years, and sometimes a few months were all that it took. I mean, that's more of a Jay question.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what you're saying is correct. For this one, you're as a playtester, as a game designer, if you want to get published by another publisher, then you are bound by the times that you can meet with them, and so those become your deadlines. And so we had that meeting in April, which I wasn't at, that Sen was at, that we all heard the story. That was a meeting in which we had to get the game to a state that was pitchable.
And it was on Kickstarter.
And we weren't even, and it was on Kickstarter less than a year later.
Yeah.
Less than a year later from me pitching it. And so, it was at a state that we knew it was good and fun, but it still wasn't a spot where we wanted it, but that was our opportunity to pitch. It's, I don't know, what percentage better? 900% better to pitch in person than any other way.
I think that's accurate, yes.
Right? So we just had to, like, here it is. Here's what. And little funny side note is later today or tomorrow I'll be pitching them a game, in the Hall of Mountain King, the card game, which is so not ready to be pitched.
Great.
But I want to show them the direction we're going and see if they even like the direction.
Because you're here.
Because I'm here. Because
Yeah,
we're here together.
absolutely.
Like, why not do that? Yeah.
And it's funny, like, we're all friends. Like, all of us are friends.
Yeah.
We talk to each other on a very regular basis.
Not
like
always about board games.
Yeah, but not also about board games. But
Yeah.
it still is better to pitch in person, because sometimes words get in the way. Like, writing them doesn't come out exactly the way you intended, and so sometimes it is just better to show you.
That's true. I mean, like from writing rule books, I've discovered that that's true. Like, in person, to say this piece goes here, to say that in rules is going to take you a paragraph and a half sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, it's crazy.
Yes,
how
the
much
brown
simpler things
meeple
are
goes on
in
the
person.
fifth square on
Yeah.
the seventh card in the
Yeah.
In a
sixth
3-player
column.
game, but in a 4-player.
Yeah, right. Cool. Any last minute thoughts from you guys about Hall of the Mountain King, about working together, about collaboration?
No, none.
No, none. That's it. All done.
Well, I'm gonna say I actually don't know if I have the words for it. This has just been such an amazing experience for me as a publisher and a gamer, and you guys are amazing, and I'm so lucky. And Graham, thank you, and thank you guys.
Thank you.
And that's all.
That's it. That's it.
That's the story of In the Hall of Mountain.
All right. Well, thank you very much for being part of the show.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Sen.
Sen.
We can't wait to play it. I love the game, so I'm looking forward to seeing it. And it's full
Glory.
copper tin foiled glory. Awesome. Thanks very much for coming out.
Thank you.